Paramount Global settled with President Trump. Obviously, we know that Disney settled with Trump when he sued ABC News for $16 million, I think. If there is a settlement in this case, in the CBS News case, which you say this is not a legitimate case of news distortion, what kind of precedent do you think that sets if Paramount Global and Shari Redstone actually do?
The danger of any kind of capitulation by any entity that capitulates to demands, censor, or still speech leads further capitulation. So my sincere hope is actually that we'll have courage and that people will stand up and act against this administration. Because as we said, there is no case news distortion here. News distortion requires intentionality by the licensee, which is actually the local broadcaster, to distort the facts. And it's very difficult to prove a case of news distortion, which is why it is not something the FCC usually find or in decades ever found distortion. So it is my hope, in fact, that we will see more courage, we will see more pushback against this administration. We have in other countries. Again, this administration is on a campaign for control of censorship. And we see it throughout the administration, not just with the FCC. The FCC is just being weaponized as its licensing authority against the broadcasters. That's releasing protesters because of their protest is telling what they can exhibit because otherwise it might be collusive ideology. It's going after law firms because of their representation of clients, or because of their lawyers themselves being upset the administration for one reason or another. It's going after diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is First Amendment components and what it is that you can say and who you can affiliate with. It's going after all sorts of entities in just to control and to censor. And so again, people will be courageous that socialism stands up for of our Constitution as a democracy, which is the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press, and hold administrations to account and not fear from
being further with Spain and Portugal after a major blackout on the Iberian Peninsula. It sparked widespread cancellations at airports and train stations. Cars on the road were brought to a standstill as traffic lights went out. Some residents flocked to supermarkets to stock up on basic essentials. Almost half of Spain's power supply has now been restored. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the cause is still unknown.
We still don't have conclusive information about the reasons for this outage. So I ask the public, as we have done in past crises, to seek information through official channels. It's best not to speculate. We'll find out the causes. We're not ruling out any hypotheses, but now we must focus on what's most important, restoring power to our home.
In Portugal, electricity has been restored to 750,000 customers, according to the country's operator. The mayor of the capital, Lisbon, urges people to stay safe.
We don't have any information about any kind of attack. You should be very careful because it can be just a technical issue, but of course, the technical issue that never happened before. So I understand that people can be a little bit scared by the situation. The city is working, the people are working, the transportation is working, the hospitals are working. And so I just ask people to keep calm and serene. That's very important at these moments.
Simon Gallagher is the managing director at UK Network Services, a consultancy specializing in energy. Good to have you with us.
Hello.
This has been dragging on for over 10 hours, impacting people in 3 countries with no clear, obvious reason. Why is it taking so long to restore power?
This has never happened before in Europe, so it is a catastrophic failure that's happened in Spain and Portugal. And just to put into perspective, this is likely to take into tomorrow to resolve. The closest thing that happened to this was actually in the United States back in 2002 when there was actually around Canada in New York. It's of that scale. So this is a catastrophic failure across Spain and Portugal, and really it will go on until tomorrow at the very least.
The reason for this, Simon, remains a mystery, right? No one seems to know what could have caused such a power outage across three countries, as well as connection issues for both phone and internet.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is that this should not happen. The grid has got all the systems built in to stop these things happening. So every day there's problems on the electricity grid worldwide, but they're all built to contain that. So something catastrophic has failed. We're beginning to get some reasoning behind it. So we do know tonight that there was a problem with the interconnector cable between Spain and France. Now, internationally, Spain isn't that well connected to the rest of Europe the way some other countries are. So cables have only got a capacity of about 4 megawatts. Spain lost 15 incidents, which is about half their entire grid. So that isn't the reason, but it's probably one of the reasons of why this has went so catastrophically wrong.
Research has shown that the brighter the colors, the more kids.
Food policy and marketing, then there's Nestle.
So these are the artificial petroleum. These are vegetables.
And when it comes to the issue of the moment, food diets, he's got a treasure trove from one of the most hot button foods, his cereals.
And you can see that the food companies don't want to eat things because kids don't want this nearly as much as they want that. Instead of going milk and turning and it is disgusting that kids like.
Professor Emerita of Nutrition and Food Policy at NYU, so we've been collecting cereal boxes for 20 years. She says companies going back for country.
Complete set of Rice Krispies and all brands of the first
But U.S. cereals like Fruit Loops mainstream contains, as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has pledged to rid them and other foods of synthetic petroleum-based dyes within 2 years over concerns they may be harmful.
If they want to add petroleum, they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But the rest of us,
These dyes have been giving Fruit Loops their neon sheen for decades.
The first one in 1963.
Were they using petroleum dyes in those?
Let's say for 1990.
We found the Fruit Loops label from 30 years ago when companies had to start listing ingredients on the package.
Turmeric color, red number 40, natural orange, lemon, cherry, lime, other natural flavors, yellow number 6, number.
And they're still using those.
Wow. So they have turmeric.
They had turmeric, but they didn't stop with turmeric.
Cereal boxes from other countries that have already made the switch show vegetable-based dyes more muted colors. And in the past, Nestle says Americans haven't liked those.
Get these cereal companies to get rid of artificial colors. For years, it's not decades. And so finally they said, okay, we're gonna do it. So they produced tricks without using artificial colors. And the tricks were kind of bland. They were earth tones and fall colors, you know, sort of red, brown, and whatever. And nobody looked at them.
So then what the company do?
They brought back the frozen dyes.
Around says it may be different. The food companies say they are making some changes. Kellogg told us they're reformulating cereal served with foods not exclusive dyes. It won't include them in any new products starting next year. Nelson says though he hopes for more from the government.
So really, that's all they're gonna do. It's wrong.
And she points out that while food dyes are sugary, cereals are still filled with sugar.
If you're a kid and you're used to that, you're not gonna be interested in it. Because these cereals are not about the cereal, they're about the sugar. The question always has been, when did it become okay to think just like something 50%?
In 2006, movie Miami Vice wasn't very arresting at the box office, but Universal is trying again with another film based on the iconic 80s TV serial. Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski is set to helm the Lee Levy and undercover detectives in South Florida. No casting announcements yet. Here's a treat for Johnny Cash fans, courtesy of his daughter. The Cindy Cash collection is one of the largest ever auctions of the legendary singer-songwriter's personal possessions, including rare photographs of Cash and his family, furniture like his hand-carved dragon bed, and jewelry, including his natural blue and white diamond ring and 14 karat gold. The auction runs through Sunday. More info at cindycash.com. Was transporting the no events. Sits on top of a lighthouse. A traumatized musician finds himself burned in an old lighthouse and beginning to see the light. Jeff Houston, Abby Cornish, and Wyndham P. Jackson star of the performance with lives on digital and VOD platforms Friday. In Hollywood, Isaac Green.
Meet this man.
You simply say
What about us now? So luckily, my friend on you.
Every business is Dell and saturated video to provide you with a broad allowing you to quickly integrate values. You get the flexibility to scale as you grow. No matter what business you're in, you can keep moving forward.
Patients who have sensitive teeth, want better teeth, they have to make a choice, one versus the other. Sensodyne Clinical Light provides 2 shades wider teeth as well as providing 24/7 sensitivity protection. Patients are going to learn to see Sensodyne specific.
The notification fee if you're applying on May 30th is University of Maryland's Global Campus, an accredited university that has transformed adult lives for more than 75 years. You're not waiting to win. You're waiting to succeed again at umgc.edu. Israel Council, all humanitarian aid into Gaza's so small steps. Food, water, and medicine, acute hunger, as well as disease abuse. Today, the international began hearings to determine whether Israel is violating international law. The UN Youth Council says Israel has controlling power to facilitate in Gaza. Palestinian diplomats of Israel is using humanitarian aid as a weapon.
It is about physically destroying the fundamentals of life in Palestine, while it blocked UN and other humanitarians from providing life-saving aid to the population. It is about Israel unraveling fundamental principles of international law, including their obligations under the UN Charter. It is about Israel turning Palestine, and particularly Gaza, into a mass grave for Palestinians and those coming to their aid.
Well, Israel is boycotting the hearing, calling circus, shameful. Israel has said it's blocking aid in Gaza to pressure Hamas to release hostages and accept this terms for a ceasefire. It has also effectively banned the UN relief agency for Palestinians, which has provided life-saving services for decades. Israel's minister, foreign minister, says Israel is infested with Hamas terrorists and there's anti-Semitism, is at the root of the ICJ attacks.
Israel is the most attacked country in the world militarily, but also political and legal things. We will not grant any legitimacy to this fund. The ICJ continues to be abused, like the ICC, for anti-Semitic purposes. It will lose its credibility and its legitimacy.
Let's bring our Jeremy Diamond, the television from me. So Jeremy, Israel's actions once again in front of the ICJ. But as we just heard there today from Israelis, instead of doing it inside, saying in the circus. So what exactly, just to expand on it, because it's not just about UNRWA.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you heard right there from Israel's foreign minister saying that he believes that these actions carried out by the UN are anti-Semitic, that he is calling them shameful proceedings, and that Israel doesn't want to legitimize these proceedings by participating in them. That, of course, is a change in strategy. As you know, Israel has participated in the ICJ trial accusing Israel of genocide. Israel has gone to that court to defend itself against those allegations. But in this case, Israel has chosen not to. Beyond those accusations that Israel is leveling back at the United Nations, including its largely evidence-free claims of UNRWA being infiltrated by hundreds of Hamas operatives without providing any of that public evidence, other than a handful of cases. Israel also disagrees fundamentally with one of the core tenets of this case before the ICJ, which is the notion of Israel being an occupying power in Gaza and the responsibilities that entails. Whereas the United Nations and UNRWA have said that Israel, as the occupying power, must allow aid into Gaza, Israel fundamentally believes that it is not classified as an occupying power.
One of the NFL's biggest draft prospects, Shedeur Sanders, received a call allegedly from the general manager of the New Orleans Saints Friday during the NFL draft. For sure. But this call turned out to be strange. Go. What does that mean? This moment on video was posted by Well Off Media, production company by Shedeur's brother, Deion Sanders Jr. Shedeur is a son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, who served as his son's only college coach. He was heavily favored to be selected in the early rounds of the NFL draft, expected to be one of the first quarterbacks off the board. But round after round, he went unclaimed. They want you to have a certain type of reaction. They want you to feel you. You know what I mean? They want you to feel bad. They want you to trust. But Shedeur was not drafted to the Saints, his friends and family could be heard saying encouraging words. This is supposed to happen. Whatever's happening is supposed to happen. A day after the prank, the former University of Colorado quarterback was drafted to the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round as the 144th overall pick. The son of Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, has apologized for the response. What I did was completely inexcusable, embarrassing, and shameful. An apology from the Falcons stated that Jax Ulbrich got Shedeur's number and opened hiding at his father's house without his knowledge. Inspiration. Everything you do and feel is connected. Okay, those passions and principles of individuality that create something actions. And when you take a whole experience and combine it, you can't help but to get something fresh and new and exciting. Yes, you could say our secret ingredient is together, because together makes it amazing. When your business is on the path to AI, Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA can quickly implement AI and get it done. Help keep your data secure and give you flexibility to keep moving forward. If you're in a high-risk fire zone, you're going to want to get maximum protection for them. Obviously, you're going to want a product that's not going to add fuel to a fire. TimberTech, Advanced PVC decking, is going to offer fire, say, a wood product spread. And we want to limit that by using products TimberTech offers that do have that fire resistance. TimberTech Vantage Collection is Class A flame spread rate, UV compliant, and ignition resistant. That's the beauty of TimberTech Vantage Collection. It's the highest market that comes from flame spreads. Two premises for my question. Firstly, he was never very popular at the start. I mean, he had the numbers in terms of how much he won by. He was never hugely popular in that sense. But more importantly, Americans got what they voted for. I mean, they did what they wanted, and now they're saying, well, I don't know about that, because his voters, the people that voted for him, are still really with him.
Republicans and party is largely, he's clearly in these polls lost the political middle right now. Independents have sort of, brought it in, if you will, because I was just thinking, it's more right that he wasn't, hugely popular, at the outset, but he had his own highest pay numbers when he took office in January of his entire political career. So not only is the hustle over now, but he's also takes some money here, and as you noted in that 39% of people on the issue that is most important to voters, and the issue that you noted is a strong suit for him, he's really suffering. We have a new poll today, GDP in the economy. 28% of Americans in that poll say current economic conditions are good. 71%, 70% Americans in the poll say they are hopeful.
The people who will be most worried about this is not the president in effect, because they're A-term libertarians or replicants to us, because they're, A-term libertarians. The people who will be worried about this are the midterms. Next time now, the Republican Party, because some coattails, this looks like it could be concrete sinking.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if you're a Republican in a battleground district, meaning it's pretty closely aligned in your district, or just say one of the 3 Republicans who sit in districts that Kamala Harris won in November, despite losing the election. You look at his 31% approval rating with independents, and you start saying, hey, this is a problem now. But we need more next year of covering Donald Trump. It doesn't necessarily mean that those Republicans are going to start abandoning independents. I mean, one of the things he has in place now, Richard, that he didn't have 8 years ago, is a much more distinct party in Capitol Hill from his own tree. It's much more in his image. But you are right. These numbers, especially on the economy, will cause concern for Republicans in this history.
And then you get a view from Ukraine and so on and based on it. So Alexei, great to see you. No, my thoughts, when I see the news is, give us your really, to get the reading ceasefire coincides with its 80th anniversary of the Victory Day in the defeat of the Germans.
The game thinking it's a poison to feel the regime, and he tries to show his negotiable, but at the same time he doesn't want anything. He is a friend of the United States. He plays this game. He tries to give something to President Trump. It's good that President Trump is taking forward the White House understands that this is just a game for him to do. And all these games should be he sends it to President Trump for trip. He is praising President Trump, but all these in reality, he doesn't make the facts that efforts which are made by the United States. He wants to continue to do that, and he will continue to do this. And the only way to do this is to put real pressure to severe sanctions, which were already mentioned by President Trump recently, sanctions and secondary sanctions against countries which are buying Russian, the sanctions against Russian shadow fleet, purge Russian oil, absolutely enough to stop this Putin game and to really have a result.
What you're saying, actually, this is the game, that's a gimmick. You try and play President Trump, who does seem as we have had repeatedly in the last couple of days, kind of frustrated that he doesn't have a deal yet. And what you're saying is there's an opportunity for President Trump to apply more pressure on Putin. Where does Ukraine, how will Ukraine, do you think, respond to this 3-day ceasefire? Just also, I'm guessing there will be some leaders who will be showing up for this 80th anniversary. Do you think, will Ukraine abide by this ceasefire?
Yeah. It's day. But the permanent is by the way, that's what I heard from in fact, Ukraine has agreed to everything. They agreed to fire the fire and the water. we reach it everywhere and just Kremlin plays this game. So I think we need to have a conversation with Americans partners. If American allies are telling to support it, maybe it can be supported, but in reality, there is no stand. Because if Putin leaves, there is no stand to wait and then for some celebration. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I still play this game. But I think Ukrainian reactions should be visualized with Americans.
And on Money Lead, we're continuing to speak with small business owners from coast to coast about President Trump's tariff. Some are in favor of the policies, many are not. My next guest is the co-founder of Stonemaier Games, one of several game-making companies now suing the Trump administration over the tariffs. And Jamie Stegmaier joins us. Now, Jamie, your company creates all sorts of original board games. Can you explain to us why tariffs have been detrimental to the gaming industry in particular?
Well, in my industry, the board game industry, we make most of our games in China. I've worked with around 13 years with a company called Panda, a Canadian company that has their main facility in China. And China has gotten really good at making all the bits and pieces and cards and boards that we put into modern hobby games.
Your industry centered around entertainment, having fun. Did the tariffs create a kind of uncertainty for your industry? And if so, what is the impact on your business and your customers?
Uncertainty is the word that we've been talking about for the last month to the tariffs in the board game industry. We don't know what the future will hold, but what we do know right now about the president is that many people, including my company, Stonemaier Games, we started making print runs of games, reprints and new games back when the tariffs even existed back in January or before. And so we are now facing the end of our production. We're ready to ship these games to the US. And if we want to do that, when those games reach the stores in the US, we have to pay $14.50 for every $10.75 making these games in China. For us, at Stonemaier Games, I haven't started to do that. So that if we shipped all these games and started making in January, it would have been around 1.5 million in tariffs that we have to pay. And that's devastating.
So the goal is to get the 145% tariff on objects of products coming from China overturned. The Trump administration's argument is basically, we don't want American companies to be manufacturing in China. We want them to be manufacturing in the United States. What's your answer to that?
My answer is truthful. Part of it is we have all these games that we've already made in China. I want to bring them to the US so I can serve my coworkers, my customers, and all the retailers in the US that we want to sell those games to. The other part of it is information. And for me, as a board game publisher, I would love to have a more simplified supply chain where we do make some products, which we assemble some products here in the US. But I would think the government incentivized and subsidized, not for making some components in China that we simply can't make here in the US.
What support, what incentives do you need? Specifically.
An example of this is right since I made a blue game here in the US. Maybe I'll make some of those components in China that I can't make here in the US, but I want to make here in the US and then handle assembly of the game here in the US. Just for that box here in the US would cost almost the entire cost of the entire game if I make it in China. And so if the government could help subsidize for that box, then they can at least take the first step and bring the construction of the box and the assembly to the US. That's great. The key step that we can take. I would need some help to do that instead of dipping into our cash essentially to pay for carrying products that you already make.
Well, that's my last question. If these keep going, if this 145% tariff on any product coming from China continues, what happens here?
I'm worried about what's happening. For now, we're treading water. We're weathering the storm. We're taking a more conservative approach to the amount of games that we decide to make for the holiday print run. We're going to start soon. If they go months or even years, 4-day publishing. We sell 35% of our products to countries outside the US, so we might just be a smaller team that sells instead of to retailers and customers in the US.
Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time.
cover basic everyday expenses. New survey from Living Tree shows a quarter of those getting bigger loans used them for groceries. Now, that number was 14% just 1 year ago. These are short-term interest-free loans that let people pay in installments. Experts worry that they encourage shoppers to buy more than they can actually afford. Taylor Svedigan joins us with the details, and this speaks to one of the biggest issues now consuming Americans, and that is what is happening with prices at the grocery store and how these tariffs are going to impact them. Tell us more about this new information.
Yeah, Tiana, right now, and everybody doesn't even say the impact of the trade wars, interest price increases, but it is another indicator that Americans are feeling stress, right? Because they're essentially using zero money to buy essentials. So this survey from Lending Tree found out that 1 in 4 buy now, pay later borrowers say that they use these short-term loans to purchase groceries. And as you mentioned, that's up significantly from a year ago. Yes, buy now, pay later has exploded in popularity because, as you mentioned, interest rates typically with these loans, they do let people break up their payments into payments, which is very inconvenient. But there is this concern that it's so easy that it's going to cause people to take on more than they can afford. Now, other categories beyond groceries that have been popular with buy now, pay later use include buying furniture, clothes, electronics, beauty products. And one item that's actually not on the list is the 16% of people who say they use buy now, pay later. Think about that for a minute. That more than half of the people who attend, they bought their tickets using buy now, pay later, which is also pretty striking. And as you know, this comes at a time when not only the prices, but the cost of borrow is high too. Now, what's important to understand here is how much of this is happening because buy now, pay later is relatively new, and how much of it is happening because people are having trouble making ends meet. Now, one telling finding from the survey is the fact that a growing share now say that they've paid late, especially younger Americans. More than half, 57% of Gen Zers say they've paid late in the past year. About 50% of millennials as well. Also, higher income borrowers are more likely to say that they've paid late. And so I do think that we need to take a step back. This is another reminder that beyond those solid national economic numbers, limited spending, there's also young life to it.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds and what, if anything, comes out of these tariff negotiations that impacts everyday Americans and businesses. That again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mom, you know what I keep in mind as? I take my free time researching because if it's not the best, it doesn't go in this box. That's why I love rich chicken. They tell out where all their ingredients come from and why they're there. Oh, please, hi. Oh no, those are body birds.
Your business is factory business in quickly and stay on you. So keep your data secure and give you flexibility to keep people.
The difference of every day. Fresh baked bread, fresh sliced meat, fresh chopped veggies, vinaigrette, sauce, and the grains. You get the perfect lunch at the perfect price. Your coworker went with the $17 salad.
Again, sort of the direction. I don't process given 2 weeks another and dating and answering they're both the same parents are both staying on the range of decision.
Bringing Therese Sabaya, she's executive director of the National Immigration Project. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. Esther, thank you so much for joining us. We should know who's involved when you were contacted by the attorney, for this, family working with, for 2 years now. And I know you're on this as well. It appears to be the talking point of this administration to focus on parenting 101, as we heard from Tom Homan there. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked specifically yesterday whether the parents or the children, who were deported, who were U.S. citizens, were given due process. It was his answer.
And I said, basically, just.
If someone just thinks it, that person, if that person is really, that's clear, he's a, I want to take myself with me. What, you have two choices, you can say yes, of course you can take your child from the not because it's your child, or you can say, yes, you can go, but the child's gonna stay behind. Then your headlines would read, U.S. holding.
There's no better.
So the mother, parents make that choice. Imagine those U.S. citizen children have fathers here in the United States. They can stay with their father. That's up to their family to decide where the children go. Children go with their parents. Parents decide where the children go. The U.S. supported their honors who were legally in
Answering the question asked of the Secretary of State, and I believe Tom Homan as well, as to whether or not in process given to these mothers, and they are not answering that question. They're focusing on parenting 101 and these being parental decisions. Do we know if due process was given?
We do know, and there's absolutely no due process in this context. And in fact, the comments from Tom Homan and Marco Rubio are incredibly disconcerting. What was happening was clear as day. There were moms who were held without any communication with their children. They were coming in for what they thought was a routine check-in. Both of them were not they couldn't have options available to them if they had a chance to consult with attorneys. And on the parent one point, the parents on the outside were trying to talk to the moms inside. The moms themselves were to speak with their families. And ICE was deliberately not allowing that to happen. So that basically they took 2 families, including 3 U.S. citizen children and a child. One of the kids had cancer. They did not allow them contact with the outside world. There was many requests for legal visits. There were requests for consultations with family members. And there was also custodians who were able to take the U.S. citizen children. He repeatedly making requests to do that, and all of those requests were denied. So there is no better example of due process denied in this extremely overt way than it was in those situations.
Because some people would say, look, if I can do these mothers and children, young children who are American citizens and essentially deport them, if I can do this to students who are on college campuses, if I can do the same thing to Venezuelan migrants, deport them to a notorious prison in El Salvador without restructuring, walk us through who is safe in this community.
I think a lot of people are asking themselves that question, and the reality is that immigrant citizens are feeling incredibly threatened right now, and they are also feeling like there has not been even a respect for the legal boundaries that exist. It is not illegal to seek asylum. That is a right that is guaranteed both in U.S. law and international law. It is also, it appears to be this enforcement effort that is targeting everybody. And the purpose of which is to create fear and feeling of insecurity among immigrants with an agenda that is more about the immigrant case than it is anything related to, the circumstances that brought people here or why they are here. And I think that both the U.S. citizen cases, but also other cases that we've been in touch with, have been illustrating. We just last week were for a Venezuelan couple who had been targeted repeatedly by immigration agents, and judge after judge found that there was no cause for the targeting, and yet they don't stop. So I think that we're just seeing an enforcement everywhere approach that really is not putting into consideration the fear and the courage that they're creating within the community.
Would be the best. Take care of Trump, because Trump is, I'm sorry to say, and he's definitely considering to be president of the United States. But he is the person that we can stand for.
Well, I'm not sure what one does with Imagine. Even individual Canadians are doing what they can by copying non-American, and showing how ridiculous these policies and language has been about Canada.
Most often, when the state is offering to Indians and anyway, continues to be across. That's probably the biggest difference. I voted for Wilson, and I chose to do that because it was scary time, but with what's happening across the border of the United States, and I feel that we're turning serious to it for a leader who will address that really with the right level of gravity.
Are you guys happy? You sit in the same room, monitoring different screens. Work for the nuclear facility. And they take they're at the heart of the force. PFA does quintuple duty as co-creator, co-star, executive producer, writer, and co-star of the series. Seasons begin streaming on Netflix.
This is so labor intensive because everything is being hand selected. You know, you find the most tender kind of.
The second season of Lucky Chow finds explorer host Daniel Chang in Taiwan with foodie-focused finds and explorations of culture. Lucky Chow premieres May 1st with new episodes weekly on PBS stations, PBS Network, and at the PBS. You know what it means to go back here.
I hear this island's got no law. Question is, are you gonna keep it that way?
Negan and Maggie are back in the second season of Dead City. A post-apocalyptic drama finds the characters back in a zombie-infested Manhattan. The Dead walk again, starting May 4th on AMC and AMC4. In Hollywood, I'm Ray.
Millennial here, graduated in 2009 during the Great Recession, and I want to weigh in on this conversation I've been seeing going around about how we survive this time of great poverty and stress in our lives. Millennials, young adults, great grief. On sharing their wisdom from the future, we don't panic during recession, prepare for them.
As Gen Z anxiously prepares for a downturn, the economist warned could be triggered by President Trump's trade war.
Especially video after video of Gen Z downtrodden, frustrated, very and hopeless about the future. When I the Great Recession in 2008, I was looking at fire over the people around me, and we were doing okay, we were all struggling so hard to be together. Number one, take whatever job you can get.
Especially the biggest piece of advice is stop comparing yourself to others on social media.
Because social media, I feel like Gen Z are living two vastly different experiences. You see Gen Z that are like struggling and broke, and then you see Gen Z that's like Coachella. We're all in this together. The reality of the situation is the vastly different. We're struggling.
On a platform that encourages keeping up with the latest trends, many TikTokers are vowing lower.
If you were an adult during the 2008 recession, can you tell me how you still enough? I am trying to fight to not spend a lot of money on everything. My mindset is I want to do it and build a practice of doing it before I have to do it out of basic necessity. I'm suggesting to those who want to farmers market and produce instead of a big box grocery store. I limit all subscriptions if I share with my friends when Amazon this year and I pay double the cost. Instead of going to the nail shop, maybe I'll get on Amazon and buy a personal nails that are going to last me a year.
If you don't got it, you don't got it. And that's focus, save and really prioritize, or you are living a life that feels really.
Yes. It's funny because a lot of people, they hear the name, Mr. Revell, and they think about being picked last, and that, it can have a little bit of a negative connotation. I think for me, I'd always looked at that opportunity. This was an opportunity to pursue my lifelong dream of getting to play professional football. So didn't really care how I got started. All I knew was getting a start.
Can you tell me what happens when you become Mr. Irrelevant?
Yeah, so, okay, well, to start, they have, this thing called the Week. It's out of Newport Beach, California. And it's basically a week long, it's a week long deal where they're gonna have roast you and toast you. And, when you are a place kicker and you have last name, they have a lot of ammunition. And so they go out and they celebrate you. They roast you, they make fun of you, and you gotta be able to laugh at yourself. You gotta have thick skin. But it really is a special week. It's fun. Never forget, it's at the Balboa Yacht Club. The beach. The town kind of comes out. You remember, I think I was sitting up on one of those big lifeguard chairs on the beach, and all these people are celebrating you and bringing you all these gifts, and kind of sitting there,
There's a trophy you get for being Mr. Irrelevant, which I think might be on the shelf behind you. Is that right? Do I see the Lozman trophy there?
You know what? I don't know that that's the Lozman. I think that may be different, but I do know the Lozman that you're talking about. And, it's got very hard makeup of the high that he's following. And, that's been great. Like my 9-year-old people, they make a trophy with it. Right? They do that. I'm like, well, you haven't been there.
What is your understanding of why the Saladas wanted to do this in the first place?
So my understanding is that, when it originally started, there were, I think, 12 rounds. And if you were to get a last pick of the 12th round, like you would never. You were going to training camp to be a body, to be a practice guy. And I think that he had a great sense of humor. He just said, man, we got to celebrate this guy. He's never gonna make a team in the NFL. We got to do something about it. Got to celebrate it.
And it does seem to be this most unlikely fraternity because from what I understand, a lot of you guys remain very invested in it.
Yeah, it is. It's a little fraternity. And it's always, getting to, if you ever, like when I was playing, I always enjoyed getting to play against you and I always know if there was in this room on this, on the other side, kind of get to connect with him before after the game was always pretty cool.
They were deeply determined. One second. Thanks to ADT. There's a lot of us going to read us. Stay secure and let others in. With the trusted name and ADT.
Your business is on the path to AI. Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA can quickly implement the AI you need. Healthcare data security. It gives you the flexibility to work from people. Perfecting your swing is hard. Replacing your windshield doesn't have to be. Go to SafeLight.com and we can come to you. Sick. Our highly trained techs can replace your windshield where you live, even if that's right in your driveway. Have a good day. I love you. SafeLight makes it easy. Go to SafeLight.com and schedule your replacement today. It takes 60 minutes.
And over the years, I've had the chance to fly. This is flights. For example, Operation Sunrise from London to Sydney. For years, there was one flight I have never done. It is known the United Airlines Island. It starts in Guernsey and it stops at 5 islands right in the islands of Micronesia and the Marshall Islands to Honolulu. But hashtag Arctics like me, this is one of the holy grails of airline routes. And last month, 7 months ago, on Monday later, I realized it's really a chance to fly the island. It's out. This will be a special trip. Time to board. That's even before I got on board. As I step onto the plane, I know the rain It's not down to the right spirits. We go like, oh, you wait for the next.
Well,
Better weather downwind. The proper name for this island hopper, United 255. The flight takes 16 hours. We stop 6 islands on the way, connecting remote communities as they wend our way across the Pacific. There are 4 pilots on board. Humans to fly this route, which has to have special regulations because it's so long.
This isn't like any other flying you can do back at the mainland where all the runways are 2 miles long and you're on final approach for 20 miles. And this is just very unique. As you can see, there's not a lot of other traffic out here. It's just us.
The island of it's a quick turnaround. Within 45 minutes, we're in the air. Then it's ready. We're making good progress. Wherever we land, there's always a tremendous wealth.
Sometimes it's
the plane itself is a Boeing 737. Even so, the island hopper crew has its own onboard mechanic who must inspect the plane at each stop. The friendliness of warmth of Pacific Islands is evident. As the passengers get on and off, I am reminded that UA 155 and 154 are more than just going from A to B. Since 1968, these flights have been a vital link to the Marshall and Mariana Islands.
A lot of people here rely on this airline from you to Guam on one end and Hawaii on the other end.
6 hours into a flight, I'm starting to lose count. Is this landing number 3 or number 4? This is something of fun. And on this journey, there's a new definition of beverage service. So we're now refueling, getting ready to go to the next stop, and the captain came up to you and gave me a grace. Now that's what you call in-flight service. I have now crossed the international date line and jumped back 24 hours. The sun is setting as we approach Hawaii and land in Honolulu. What a journey!
How to remember the warmth, the charmingness, the islands, was words.
Canada, choosing who will lead the country next as President Trump continues his threats and taxation on our neighbors to the north. Within the last media projecting its reversal of fortune for the liberal before Trump today threats. Here's following me. Ottawa following the Justin Trudeau even resigned to allow these elections to happen. So how big of a factor is President Trump in Canada? It's a nice thing.
Some say in terms of the liberal resurrection, all of that is an old factor. And why? Because Mark saying now Prime Minister in Canada, he had taken over 4 weeks ago, which has now been elected Prime Minister. So many in Canada that I heard from Laura told me, look, this is a safe pair of hands. A former central banker, not just in Canada, but in Britain, Brexit. They wanted someone in the room, in the Oval Office, who they feel could stand up for Canadian rights and sending a message to Trump that they intend to bargain and demand respect. that went over well through this campaign. That is the political drama of the moment. I want to give you the political dramas that come, right? And you already know how to use a minority government after ballot. And we with enough speech they made by the end of the year, you need to have a minority government. That was a big impact. You see what kind of a free reign is happening with this kind of deal with President Trump in the United States. Minority government things become a little bit more complicated. President Trump's nominee to be one of the nation's most powerful prosecutors apologized for doing just that. He thinks it's a confirmation battle. Ed Martin is Trump's pick as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., and he claims that he does not know the man you see on your screen. His name is Timothy Hale Pisanelli. They didn't know his history as a January 6th rioter or as you can tell from this, and as a sympathizer. Now Martin says, quote, "I'm sorry. I denounce everything about what that guy said, everything about what he talked, and all I've now seen." The fake file has uncovered all the audio that shows that Martin should have known better. So he's calling him an amazing guy, quote unquote. And since the update is here with me now. So, Andrew, this is Trump's pick to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. It's a really important job. And Martin distancing himself now from basically like Nazi sympathizer who the staff there. But he repeatedly praised this individual. What did you find?
Yeah, he's apologizing now. He says he wasn't aware of the full extent of his comments. So the audio that we found really sort of directly, or appears to directly undermine that, because we found on multiple podcasts interviews, they actually discussed this guy's view. They completely that mustache and everybody just saw. They discussed it. They really sort of almost dismissed it to listen to them talking here.
In your case, they used your phone and took a photo and leaked the photo to say, "Oh, these people, MAGA people are anti-Semitic." And the photo was of you. You've always heard you say before. You know, you had like a mustache shaved in such a way that you looked vaguely like Hitler, and making jokes about it. Again, not not your best moment, but not illegal. Have you ever been to a Nazi rally? I mean,
Vaguely. So not only is he aware of this guy's past behavior, it would seem from what you sound, but the two have been friendly from your reporting now for quite a while.
Yeah, that's right, Aaron. He called him an amazing guy, a great friend. He was down. Some of the appearances that we saw, he was downplaying those views that came out ahead of trial. They called it character assassination. Even and though when he was saying that he didn't know about it, his racist and his anti-Semitic views came out long before Martin started associating with him. I think every single article on this guy as a January 6th writer, he mentioned that it had been thoroughly documented. There was a Navy investigation where his work came out in court records, and still, this is what Martin said about it.
Well, Mr. Butt, she subbed out with a great friend of ours too, Tim Hale. The only thing you did that was really egregious to me was at one point on camera, you were sort of dancing in one of the bays of one of the areas as celebrating America. It wasn't your best dance move. Our next guest is my friend Timothy Hale. He's an amazing guy who has gotten through all that and has a great perspective. So welcome back, Tim. How are you?
So the vote for March is coming up. He had to submit questions and answers to senators. Senators sent him a bunch of questions. We just actually, my colleague Amy Rare got those answers tonight. And one of the answers that he said about Mr. Hale was quote, and I'm reading from he said senators was, "I am not close with him, but we," another clip that we found said, quote, "Tim Hale is an extraordinary guy. I've gotten to know him really well. I'd say we're friends over the last few years. So now I'm not pleased with him, but before he said,
Got to know him really well.
An extraordinary guy." Yes.
Extraordinary guy. One second, I gotta finish my laundry. One second, are you racist? The company that we have, and Olivia. Okay, let's watch this. Wait. See that? Okay. Financial Risk.com to get $20 off your purchase.
In Portugal, electricity statements just seven. The mayor of the state. Information about any kind of actors, because it might exist, everybody see God, of course, everybody said that never happened before, so I understand that people can be a little bit scared. But the city is working.
This is simply saying.
When the transportation is working, the hospitals are working, and so I just ask people to keep. That's very important and inspiring. Simon Gallagher is the next spaces. So especially
It's clinically driven. This week in our team, I would recommend this to everybody. It's really an amazing product.
Retail trays.
Major blind spot widespread cancellations at airports and train stations. House of the Royal report to extent there was traffic lights went out. Residents were consistently to stock up on basic essentials. On this path, the state power supply has now been restored. Prime Minister has returned
We still don't have conclusive information about the reasons for this outage. So I asked the public, as we have done in past crises, to seek information through channels. It's best not to speculate. We'll find out the cause. We're not ruling out any hypothesis, but now we must focus on what's most important, restoring power to our home.
In Portugal, electricity has been restored to 750,000 customers, according to the country's power operator.
We don't have any information about any kind of attack. It should be very careful because it can be just a technical issue, but of course, a technical issue that never happened before. So I understand that people can be a little bit scared by the situation, but the city is working, the people are working, the transportation is working, the hospitals are working, and so I just ask people to keep calm and serene. That's very important at this moment.
Simon Gallagher is the managing director at UK Network Services, the consultancy specializing in energy. Good to have you with us.
Hello.
Simon, this has been dragging on for 10 hours in people 3 countries with no clear obvious reasons. So why is it taking so long to restore power?
Well, this has never happened before in Europe, so it is a catastrophic failure that's happened in Spain and Portugal. And just to put it into perspective, this is likely to take into tomorrow to resolve. The closest thing that happened to this was actually in the United States back in 2002 when there was that park up around Canada and New York. It's on that scale, so this is a catastrophic failure across Spain and Portugal, and really it will go on until tomorrow. Very.
For this, Simon, remains a mystery, right? No one seems to put a fully structured power outage because 3 countries, as well as connection issues for both phone and internet days in.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is this should not happen. The grid has got all sorts of systems built in to stop these things happening. So every day there's problems on electricity grids worldwide, but they're all built to contain that. So something catastrophic has failed. We're beginning to get some reasons. So we do know tonight that there was a problem with the interconnected cables between Spain and France. Now, internationally, Spain isn't that well connected to the rest of Europe the way some others are. So those cables have only got a capacity of about 4 megawatts. Spain lost 15 megawatts during this incident, which is their entire grid. So that isn't the reason. It's probably one of the reasons why this is catastrophically wrong.
As Ross served for years as the top diplomat at the State Department, working closely on the peace process and on wider regional issues. His most recent book is Statecraft 2.0, which explores the ways America has failed to align foreign policy goals and actions. Ambassador Ross, welcome back to the program. It is good to see you. It's your book in just a moment, but I'm sure you were able to listen to my conversation there with Susan Glasser, and we were talking about foreign policy, where the president seems to be quick to make some sort of deal in resolving a number of these conflicts going on around the world, and to now be questioning Vladimir Putin's long-term intent. And on the issue of Israel, he hasn't spent much time discussing the war in Gaza either. He came into this administration in this term demanding that all the hostages be released and that this war come to an end. The hostages still remain in Gaza. The blockade continues. Where do you see this president in terms of any leverage that he is putting on Minister Netanyahu specifically to get this resolved one way or the other?
I think it's a really interesting question because you can also say, because you were in your interview with Susan, Susan was making a point that you haven't seen the president exert any real leverage on Putin. We also haven't seen him exert any real leverage on Prime Minister Netanyahu. In the service of the objectives of the president himself, he wanted, which was to bring the CF-50 to an end. The question I think becomes, will he? We had a kind of interesting indicator of how President Trump approached Prime Minister Netanyahu. On the one hand, it is very supportive rhetorically. On the other hand, he has been in the Oval Office, ostensibly to talk about tariffs, although clearly the real reason was to talk about everything. He's surprising the Prime Minister in that meeting by announcing he's going to have direct subsidy on Saturday. When the issue of tariffs comes up, he makes it clear that he's not doing anything in that regard. And he reminds everyone that we provide Israel $4 billion a year, a not so subtle signal that suggests we're doing plenty for you, don't expect us to give you a break on this. So here we're signaling that he'll do what he wants to do. He's not necessarily applying overt political pressure, but there's a subtle message there that implies pressure. And I would even say, if you look at his interview in Time Magazine, the interview of Time Magazine, he says about Iran that, you know, I didn't make them comfortable. I mean, I didn't make the Israelis comfortable. I didn't wave off their strike, but I didn't make them comfortable. So these are all indications that, in fact, he might be prepared to exercise leverage, but to the essence of your players, haven't seen it yet. You certainly haven't seen it on Gaza, although even in that meeting with Netanyahu, he said he expected the war to resume, and then he said in the not too distant future. So that implies something that they're coming, you just haven't seen it yet. Sometimes.
Individually, the 100th day of Donald Trump's second term. You will be very pleased to hear. The most successful 100 days in the history of our country.
Just 39% of Americans approve of the way Trump is doing his job, lower than any past president. At the 100-day mark, he has the lowest approval rating of any president in the past 80 years. Donald Trump raised 11 points underwater. The information unit protected. Unit protected its people.
Somewhere.
Amazon, Jeff Bezos is paying $30 million for the license they got to generate Melania Trump.
You have to wait outside us. We could hoping to catch a rare nocturnal feeding of nuggets.
Words of war, profile Russian journalists and human rights incidents on the solar subscribe.
One of those.
choosing material with something involved. Two of these things can be used by Russia, or could no longer Russia. The only person who speaks the truth about the leader was and what he was doing.
Russia is raging against feminists. If the leading purpose is a dedicated campaign of genocide, because it's seen of the truth that they draw.
This was the first person to me. He spoke out against the newly elected Putin and said, he's right. His reasons were invading the country was not true. Maybe certainly in terms of all in those steps.
It's our conversation, raise awareness of an important issue because when our journalists
remember the time too. If you choose to be the journalist in Russia, you have Mexico. 2024 was further military and identified as well. We're looking at it as far as when it's a common moral danger. There is nothing of value of literature.
But that's the Sky Reason. Sky Reason, I saw it from the years in many It's Sky Reason. No thanks to my standing this today. You said when you put down because your ideas are anticipated. That is really
By May 30th.
So. And our politics lead CBS News the surprise exits executive producer Bill Humphries last week. Here's anchor Scott Sully at the end of last week's show.
And the FCC Central League,
Paramount is trying to complete the Trump administration must prove Paramount began to supervise in this way. None of our stories have been blocked, but Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires. No one here is happy about it.
It's interesting. It says none of our stories have been blocked, but that's not the same thing as none of our stories has been meddled with. Two different things. President Trump, of course, has repeatedly called for CBS to release its license and has urged the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, to punish the broadcaster after he claimed that CBS News distorted an interview with then Vice President Harris last year. His campaign's direction. There's no evidence for that. What 60 Minutes did appears to be basic editing of a long-winded politician, as Fox does to President Trump. CBS News parent company Paramount and Trump have agreed to a mediator in President Trump's lawsuit against CBS News. Sherry Redstone, the primary Paramount shareholder, is hoping to settle the lawsuit. She eyes a multi-billion-dollar deal to sell Paramount. It's a sale that would need the Trump administration's ultimate sign-off via FCC. These talks are expected to start when a settlement in the news distortion lawsuit this week, according to the New York Times. Legal experts have called the case, quote, frivolous and dangerous. Joining us now is one of the four people leading the FCC, Commissioner Anna Gomez, who was appointed by President Biden in 2023. So there are two things going on here, Commissioner. The FCC plays a role about, the FCC has to see this merger that Paramount owns, in which Jerry Redstone would make a lot of money. And the FCC is separately investigating complaints about this same interview from a pro-Trump group, this interview with Kamala Harris. And your chairman says it's potentially a serious issue, this separate issue. Do you think that the two are connected in any way?
What we have before us is a complaint, as you mentioned, of news extortion by the separate groups. The staff of the FCC, the expert staff, actually dismissed the complaint earlier this year, but the current chair reinstated the complaint, stating that he needed further evidence. Let's be clear, what this administration is doing, it is on a game to censor and control, and it's it is directing into in their
You're talking about the merger. Yeah.
But I think that there is no case of news distortion in the 60 minutes interviews that were shown before the interview.
So you said that this is amounts to censorship. The Trump administration, conservatives behind the MAGA movement, they all say that they're in favor of free speech, that they're big free speech absolutists. But so how can it be that they're doing censorship?
The First Amendment is government interference in the free speech of citizens, the freedom of speech of companies, and the freedom of and news. So, in fact, what they are doing is opinion to censor. They do it by killing. We see companies are thinking twice about what they say because they don't want to anger the citizens. And we're already hearing that, and you see it at least how these are providing to their viewers because of their retribution, or in this case, because there is a financial interest in closing the transaction.
So, President Trump, I think is suing CBS News for $20 billion, I believe. I've heard figures bandied about by informed news sources that it could be as much as $50 or $70 million global settlement with President Trump. Obviously, that Disney settled with Trump when he sued ABC News for $16 million. If there is a settlement in this case, in the CBS News case, if you say this is not a legitimate case before the what kind of precedent do you think that sets by if Paramount Global and Jerry Redstone actually do?
Danger of any kind of capitulation by any entity that capitulates to demands to censor or chill speech and leads further capitulation. So my sincere hope is that it is words and that people will stand up and push out because, as you said, there is a case of news distortion here. News distortion requires licensee, which is exactly the way staff can distort the facts. And it's very difficult to prove a case of news distortion, which is why it's not something the FCC says. Usually find or every decade ever found all sorts of these. So in fact, it is my favorite. In fact, that we will see more courage and we will see more pushback against the administration. Again, this administration has control and censorship, and you see it throughout the FCC is being weaponized with its licensing authority against the broadcast. But you have an administration that's arresting protesters because of their campus protests. Is showing us what an exhibit says otherwise it's this idea of it's going after what representation because of their lawyers themselves upset. It's going after diversity between First Amendment components and whether you could say who you can affiliate with. It's going after all sorts of entities in just censor. And so again,
And so I just see what exactly considers that explain with the
for of our citizens of devices, freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and hold administration to account, not fear or recognition from it.
All right, Mr. Gomez, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Egypt blackout spawned widespread cancellations at airports and train stations. Cars on the road were brought to a standstill as traffic lights went out. Some residents spoke to supermarkets and stocked up on basic essentials. Almost half of Spain's power supply has now been restored. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez says the cause is still unknown.
I still don't have conclusive information about the reasons for this outage. So I asked the public, as we have done in past crises, to seek information through official channels. It's best not to speculate. We find out the cause. We're not ruling out any technology, but now we must focus on what's most important: restoring power to our homes.
In Portugal, electricity has been restored to 750,000 customers, according to the country. The mayor has
We don't have any information about any kind of attack. We should be very careful because it can be just a technical issue, but of course, a technical issue that never happened before. So I understand that people can be a little bit scared in the situation, but the people are working, the transportation is working, the hospitals are working, and so I just ask people to keep calm and serene. That's very important at this moment.
Simon Gallagher is the managing director at Utah Network Services, the consultancy specializing in energy. Good having with us. This has been dragging on for over 10 hours. Impacting people in 3 countries with no clear reasons. Why is it taking so long to sort out?
Well, this is just happening over in Europe. It is a catastrophic failure that's happened in Spain and Portugal. And just to put into perspective, this is likely to take into control all. The closest thing that happened to this was actually in the United States back in 2002 when there was that fire cut up around Canada and New York. It's all that scale. So this is a catastrophic failure across Spain and Portugal, and really one very
Remains a mystery, right? No one knows what could have caused such a power outage in 3 countries, as well as connection issues for both phone and internet.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is this should not happen. The grid is all built in to stop this thing happening. So every day the problems on electricity grid is worldwide, but they're all built to contain that. So something catastrophic has failed. We're beginning to get some reasons behind it. So we do know tonight that there was a problem with the interconnection cable between Spain and France. Now, internationally, Spain isn't that well connected to the rest of Europe the way most countries are. So those cables have only got a capacity of about 4 megawatts. Spain lost 13 megawatts during this incident, which is about half their entire grid. So that isn't the reason. It's probably one of the reasons of why this has been so catastrophic here.
That the brighter the colors, the more kids like it.
Few people know more about food safety marketing than there's necessary.
So these are artificial petroleum.
She's got a treasure trove of one of the most hot button foods, kids cereals.
But you can see if food companies don't want to use it because kids don't want this nearly as much as they like that. And then particularly the colors that are going to milk and turn that kids will think.
Professor Emerita of Nutrition and Food Policy at NYU, Lisa has been collecting cereal boxes for 20 years. And she's got copies of boxes going back more than 100 years.
Rice Krispies and some brand
But U.S. cereals like Fruit Loops may soon change as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has pledged to rid them and other forms of synthetic petroleum-based dyes within 2 years over concerns they may be.
If they want to add petroleum, they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. The rest of us,
Dyes have been giving Fruit Loops their neon sheen for decades.
The first one in 1963.
Were they using petroleum dyes in those?
No, someone here.
We found the Fruit Loops label 30 years ago when companies would start listing ingredients on the package.
Turmeric color, red number 40, natural orange, lemon, cherry, flavored yellow number 6.
And they're still using it. They had turmeric, but they didn't stop with
Cereal free which is already made. So vegetable-based dyes more muted colors. In the past, Nestle says Americans haven't liked those.
Get rid of all these people. For years, they've not. And so finally they said, okay, we're gonna do it. So they produced the trick without using companies. And the tricks were kind of bland, they were earth tones, solid colors. So sort of muted red, brown, results and whatever. And nobody believed. So then they brought back the petroleum side.
Says it may be different. The companies say they are making some changes. Kellogg told us they're reformulating cereals served in schools to not include the dyes. Won't include them in any new products starting next year. Nestle said though she'd hoped for more from the government.
It's voluntary.
And she points out that while food dyes are a start, cereals are still filled with sugar.
If you're a kid and you're used to that, you're not going to be eaten. Because these cereals are not about the cereal themselves, they're about sugar. The question always has been, when did it become okay to feed this food infection?
Certain drugs, the Pepsi that. A 2006 movie, Miami Vice, was ago arresting at the box office, but Julie Lewis managed with another film based on the iconic 80s TV series. Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski is set to helm the new movie about undercover detectives in South Florida. No casting in KCS. Here's a treat for Johnny's Cash fan, courtesy of his daughter. The Cindy Cash collection is one of the largest ever auctions of the legendary singer-songwriter's personal possessions. Cash and his family, furniture like his hand-carved dragon bed, and jewelry, including his natural blue and white diamond ring and 14 ounce gold. The auction runs through Sunday. More info at cindycash.com.
The truck was transporting there's no lids. On top of the way down.
Thomas Hines musician finds himself wounded in an old lighthouse and beginning to see the light. Jackson State, Eddie Cornish, and Raymond P. Jackson starring as Thomas, which arrives on digital and VOD platform on Friday. Ben Holly, my favorite band.
Give you the answer the key.
Interaction, speak loud.
So all this person saving the ritual, seeing the actually shows what we mean.
These guys actually people will driving machine.
Israel has blocked in 2002 March 2nd, all foods, warfare, and medicine, and acute hunger, as well as today, the International Court of Justice began hearings to determine whether Israel is violating international law. This is illegal that Israel is an occupying power and facilitating Gaza. Palestinian diplomats of Israel is using humanitarian aid as a weapon of militancy.
It is about Israel destroying the fundamentals of life in Palestine, while it blocks the UN and other humanitarians from providing life-saving aid to the population. It is about Israel unraveling fundamental principles of international law, including their obligations under the UN Charter. It is about Israel turning Palestine, and particularly Gaza, into a mass grave for Palestinians and those coming to their aid.
What Israel is boycotting the hearing, calling it circus, shameful. Israel has said it's blocking aid in Gaza to pressure Hamas to release hostages and accept its terms for a ceasefire. It has also effectively banned UN relief and for Palestinians, which has provided life-saving services for decades. Israel's Minister for Foreign Affairs is quote, infested with Hamas terrorists since anti-Semitism, is at the root of the ICJ case.
Israel is the most attacked country in the world militarily, but also political and legal. We will not grant any legitimacy to this fact. If the ICJ continues to be abused, like the ICC, for anti-Semitic purposes, it will lose its credibility and its legitimacy.
Let's bring out Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv for more. So Jeremy, Israel's actions once again back in front of the ICJ, but as we just heard from Israeli ministers, including Gideon Saar, saying, you know, they do not want to take part in what's called the circus. So what exactly, just to expand on this, are their objections? Because it's not just about Russia.
Yeah, without a doubt. You heard right there from Israel's foreign minister saying that he believes that these actions carried out by the UN are anti-Semitic, that he is calling them shameful proceedings, and that Israel doesn't want to legitimize these proceedings by participating in them. That, of course, is a change in strategy. As you know, Israel has participated in the ICJ trial accusing Israel of genocide. Israel has gone to that court to defend itself against those allegations. But in this case, Israel has chosen not to. You know, beyond those accusations that Israel is leveling back at the United Nations, including its largely evidence-free claims of UNRWA being infiltrated by hundreds of Hamas operatives without providing any of that kind of public evidence, other than a handful of cases. Israel also disagrees fundamentally with one of the core tenets of the case before the ICJ right now, which is the notion of Israel being an occupying power in Gaza and the responsibilities that entails. Whereas the United Nations and UNRWA have said that Israel, as the occupying power, must allow aid into Gaza, Israel fundamentally believes that it is not classified as an occupying power as a matter of
One of the NFL's biggest draft prospects, Shedeur Sanders, received a call allegedly from the general manager of the New Orleans Saints Friday during the NFL draft. Yeah, for sure. But the call turned out to be a prank.
Okay.
What does that mean? This moment on video was posted by Well Off Media, a production company by Shedeur's brother, Deion Sanders Jr. Shedeur is the son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, who served as his son's only college coach. He was heavily favored to be selected in the early rounds of the NFL draft, expected to be one of the first quarterbacks the board, but round after round, he ran unclean.
They want you to have a certain type of reaction. They want you to feel, you know what I mean? They want you to feel bad, they want you to feel it.
Although Shador was not drafted to the Saints, his friends and family could be heard saying encouraging words.
But more importantly, and this is what they voted for. It doesn't have to want us, you know, the same, it's all of the next. I don't know about biasing this, because Steve's voters, and several voters, these these players lost the ability to get them. Independence aside. And so it's in the it's more that he doesn't seem to be happy. That's at the peak. He's old.
A day after the prank, that's when
The issue that is most important to voters and the issue that voters are still suffering, even hold on to human rights. 28% minority.
to the Cleveland Browns, fifth round as the 144th overall pick. The son of Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Aldrich has apologized for the complaint call, writing, "What I did was completely inexcusable, embarrassing, and shameful." An apology from the Falcons stated that Jax Aldrich got Shador's number off an open iPad at his father's house without his knowledge.
You know Harbor Freight for affordability. Durability goes right along with it. You see, we test and then we test again. Now it's time for you to put us to the test. Whatever you do, do it for us at Harbor Freight. Ready to work for you with drug discovery tools powered by Dell AI Factory with NVIDIA. Helping you make small breakthroughs that lead to big discoveries. Analyzing data in real time to help people in no time. Paving the way to turn research into reality faster than ever before.
Patients who have sensitive teeth but also want wider teeth, they have to make a choice, one versus the other. Sensodyne Clinical Light provides 2 days wider teeth as well as providing 24/7 sensitivity protection. Patients are going to love to see Sensodyne on the shelf.
New application fee is due by May 30th at University of Maryland, Global Cambridge, an accredited university that has transformed adult lives for more than 75 years. You're not waiting to win. You're ready to succeed at UNGC.edu.
Two premises to my question. Firstly, he was never very popular to start with. I mean, actual numbers in terms of how much he won by. He was never hugely popular in that sense. But more importantly, Americans got what they voted for. I mean, they did what they wanted, and now they're saying, "Harry, buyers remorse me." Well, I don't know about buyers remorse because his voters, the people that voted for him, are still really with him. And Republicans, his party is largely with him. He clearly, in these polls, lost the political middle right now. Independents have sort of fleed from him, if you will, because I would just say this: you are right that he wasn't hugely popular at the outset, but he had his own highest poll numbers when he took office in January of his entire political career. So not only is the honeymoon over now, but he's also taking on water here. And as you noted, in that 39% of people on the issue that is most important to voters and the issue that you know is strongest for him, he's really suffering. We have a new poll out today digging in on the economy. 28% of Americans in that poll say current economic conditions are good. 71%, 7 in 10 Americans in this poll say they are poor. And people who will be most worried about it is not the president of the Senate. Because any term limited, or let's not get into that, because you know what I mean. Any term limited, the people who will be worried about this are the midterms. Next time round, the Republican Party, because apart from coattails, this looked like it would be concrete sinking.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if you're a Republican in a battleground district, meaning it's pretty closely aligned in your district, or just say one of the 3 Republicans who sit in districts that Kamala Harris won in November despite losing the election. You look at his 31% approval rating with independents, and you start saying, hey, this is a problem now. What we've learned over 8 years of covering Donald Trump, it doesn't necessarily mean that those Republicans are going to start abandoning the president. I mean, one of the things he has in place now, Richard, that he didn't have 8 years ago, is a much more supportive party on Capitol Hill from his own team. It's much more in his interest. But you are right. These numbers, especially on the economy, will cause concern for Republicans in tough districts.
Let me get the views from your friend of mine, and I'll listen to Sharenta well and post on the show. And it's great to see you. Look, my
Sure. I mean, it's huge things. And I don't see the excitement of it.
My first thing, well, I told you, why next week? Why not? Why not now? Give us your reaction, really, to this 3-day ceasefire, which also coincides with the 80th anniversary of the Victory Day, the defeat of
This is just a game procedure. It's a poison to continue. And he tried to show himself. He goes to me at the same time.
Soon they pre-order. Look at the millions and millions of small businesses that couldn't afford it. Supposed to see it. Those great retailers, they're all just having paid for some of the biggest ones. Walmart, Home Depot, they've really tried to create these tariffs could lead to restrictions and more. Regulation, I was echoing the warnings and Customs writing, we expect a sharp story. Well, it comes to slavery.
It's good that President Trump is taking
worried. The latest poll out this afternoon, finding a majority of Americans, 59%, say Trump's policies have made economic conditions in the U.S. worse, which could explain why the administration is timid.
This is just and this is the game should the Putin is speaking alone. He's sending to President Trump's portrait. He's praising President Trump, but all these are here. In reality, he does not respect that.
Trillions of dollars.
Which are made by the United States. He wants to continue the war, and he will continue to do this. And the only way is to put real pressure to impose serious sanctions, which were already mentioned by President Trump recently. Sanctions on banks, Russian banks, and secondary sanctions against countries which by Russian. I would add to the sanctions against Russian shadow fleet, which transport Russian oil, and that will be absolutely enough to stop this Putin's games and to really.
It's one of the major. It's been very, very tough in the administration now. It's a major tariff. He told Time magazine, I quote him, I made 200 books. I was finding me 200 days, 100%.
Yeah, it's you're right, and just being we've had repeatedly in the last couple of days, kind of frustrated that he doesn't have a deal yet.
Just continue to say, I'm talking to you as we speak this time.
You say there's an opportunity for President Trump to apply more pressure on Putin. When does Ukraine, how will Ukraine, do you think, respond to this 3-day ceasefire? Because of course, I'm guessing there will be some leaders who are out. Showing up for this 80th anniversary. Will Ukraine abide by this ceasefire?
Ukraine already commented and we are very clear. We need to have the entire right now. And not for 3 days, but a permanent ceasefire. And by the way, that's my opinion to what I heard already. And the 2 leaders we mentioned. But over so that's Ukraine and Greece are every way we reach this fire on the third, we reach this fire through there, and just Kremlin plays this game. So I think we need to have a consultation with America. If American allies are telling them to support it, maybe it can be supported. But in reality, there is no peace. There is no sound.
Great, all takes up a great deal of usually was long term, let's say, been definitely just being you make games in China. I worked with around 15 years with project in Canada. It's a Canadian company that has a main facility in Canada. In Canada and science, we are making bits and pieces and components and boards that we put into modern and hobby languages.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Upfront tonight is 90%. Stands for recession. That is a prediction tonight from a top economist, Torsten Flach, painting a dire picture of Trump's trade war and the implications. And it's pushing the U.S. economy to the brink of full-blown crisis. He writes that in just weeks, quote, the consequence will be shelves in U.S. stores in a few weeks and COVID-like shortages for consumers and for firms using Chinese products as intermediate goods. And the administration tonight, not
if we should
giving a reassurance when pressed on this debate.
Are you worried about empty shelves?
Not the present. We have some great retailers. I assume they pre-ordered.
I assume you pre-ordered. We're getting millions and millions. Small businesses are putting them pre-order and everybody those great retailers were all just at the White House with businesses and CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot. They warned Trump and Apple that his tariffs could lead to product shortages anymore. Barclays tonight is echoing the warning, the memo to investors writing. We expect a sharp slowdown, like the U.S. recession in the coming quarters. All of it comes to tonight when we're using Diamond, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, reportedly told investors just days ago, according to the Wall Street Journal, that a best case scenario is a mild recession. It's a daily drumbeat of stories now coming from people who know a lot about the economy and how Americans are worried. Our latest poll out this afternoon, finding a majority of Americans, 49%, say Trump's policies have made economic conditions in the U.S. worse. It could explain why the administration is tonight.
And so, with creating
this only kind of talk about those parties. Moments ago, Trump signing executive orders, this time starting truck drivers and what language they speak. Just look at the North Lawn of the White House. Covered in photos of people the administration say are illegal. That's what they want to talk about. That's the discussion they want to have. We certainly do not want to talk about the economy. Over the past 100 days,
Dow was saying nearly 4,000 points, trillions of dollars gone for now. According to CNBC, the S&P drop over the first 100 days of Trump's presidency is on track to be the worst 100-day performance in the stock market since Nixon. And that's clearly not something that you'd want to talk about if you were Trump.
The next Trump economic move is again up to 2024. It's gonna be a boom.
Word before saying now, tonight the Treasury Secretary is trying to turn things around. They feel the clock, they feel the pressure. He's previewing the deal.
I would guess that India would be one of the first trade deals we would sign, so watch this space.
Could come as soon as tomorrow. Who knows? They've got announcements in the morning. It's one of the many deals we're told Trump is making. But it's been very, very tough to pin the administration down on something of such crucial nature, tariffs, the economy, a recession. How many deals are they negotiating? Now have 18 proposals on paper that have been brought to the trade team. Okay, 18, who knows? It's with your finger and sticking in the air because Trump's number dwarfs anything the White House has put out. He told Time magazine, and I quote him, I've made 200 deals. Time responded, you made 200 deals, Trump, 100%. Now, never mind kind of limits at 18.
And other issues that are nearby FDA. Fixed, but later.
Trump's at 200. Let's just compare Trump's number, 200, to the list that he released when he announced the sweeping tariffs earlier this month in front of that board with went by. There were not even 200 countries on it in total. Now, and that remember that island? What's the question? The island that was inhabited by Cleveland. Countries that Team Trump is continuing to say they are talking to as we speak.
That the governments are in contact with China.
The Chinese government telling outside exclusively that no one in the Chinese government is spoken to the Trump administration. And all this back and forth has come as Trump has said he would slash the tariffs on China. Now, he said that without any negotiating or talks at all, which brought to mind an episode of Seinfeld where George and Jerry were negotiating. If someone is concerned.
Say yes. And then you tap your state alpha, and then you have a U.S. those U.S. citizenship, the states, they can stay with answering the question asked the Secretary of State and question why listening apparently they want to be saying what decisions. We do want to what's in fact, the comments incredibly workplace companies, you can see there with their children, they feel that they was a routine and you say, but it be available to them for the chance to attorneys. And on this parent one point, because parents on the outside were trying to talk to moms on this side, sometimes themselves or to their families. And I spoke to the university, so that basically be pushed to families like we one of the patients were they didn't the outside world. There were many requests for legal visits, or requests for consultations with family members, and there was also custodian for so repeatedly making requests to do that, and all of the requests were denied. So there is no better example of
was denied in this extremely overplayed, in this situation. These brothers, soldiers and many children, right? Citizens of the part-time. If I can do this to students from college campuses, if I can do the same thing to Venezuelan migrants, Portland to notorious process, who is safe.
Or is President El Salvador without due process? Because we have history who is safe in this country. I think a lot of people are asking themselves that question. And the reality is that Americans are feeling incredibly threatened right now, and they are also feeling like there has not been even a respect for the legal boundaries that exist. It is not illegal to seek asylum. There's a right that is guaranteed both in U.S. law and international law. It is also enforcement efforts that is targeting everybody. The purpose of this practice to create a feeling of security among immigrants with an agenda that is more about immigrant state than it is about anything related to the circumstances that brought people here or why they're here. And I think that both the U.S. citizens, but also all of the other people that we've been involved with have been illustrated. We just last week were in court for a Venezuelan couple who had been targeted repeatedly by immigration agents, and judge after judge found that there was no cause for targeting, and yet they don't stop. So I think that we're seeing an enforcement everywhere that really acknowledge distinguishing or taking into consideration. The fear and the terror that they're creating within the community.
This be the thing to take care of from this uncertainty debate. So the narrative is candidate the friendship relationships and radio landers were at the heart of four seasons. The United States the United States. The Four Seasons begin streaming on Netflix. And doctors report this is
Sure, what one does with the madman, even individual Canadians are doing what they can by talking non-American. And showing how ridiculous these policies and his language has been about Canada. The most top of mind is Canadian sovereignty and Canada continues to be a sovereign nation. That's probably the biggest issue, the most important thing. I voted for Liberal, and I chose to do that because it is a scary time with what's happening across the border of the United States. And I feel that my friend is seriously for a leader who will address. Really with the right level of gravitas.
Are you guys happy? You sit in the same room monitoring different screens. Workers at a nuclear facility. This is the heart of the Four Seasons. He does quintuple duties: creator, co-showrunner, executive producer, writer, and co-star of that series. The Four Seasons begins streaming on Netflix April.
They could so over-intensive because everything has to be hand selected. You can find the most tender petals
The seventh season of Lucky Chow finds explorer host Daniel Chang in Taiwan for foodie-focused finds and explorations of culture. Lucky Chow premieres May 1st with new episodes weekly on PBS stations, PBS Passport, and the PBS app. To go back here.
Heard. I hear this island's got no law. Of course, you're gonna keep it that way.
Negan and Maggie are back in the second season of The Walking Dead, Dead City. The post-apocalyptic drama finds the characters back in a zombie-infested Manhattan. The Dead walk again, starting May 4th on AMC and AMC Plus. In Hollywood, I'm Rick Jumper.
Another indicator that Americans are struggling to cover basic everyday expenses. A survey from Lending Tree shows a quarter of those giving
is 16% of people who say they need financial leaders for delivery, for food delivery or for food takeout. Think about that for a moment. Also, Georgia recently reported that more than half of the people who attended Coachella, they bought their tickets using
buy now, pay later loans, use them for groceries. So that number was 14% just 1 year ago. These are short-term interest-free loans that let people pay in advance.
What's hard to understand here is that this is happening just because buy now pay later is a relatively new and convenient thing. How much of it is because people are having trouble?
Experts worry that they encourage shoppers to buy more than they can afford.
Say that they paid great, especially younger.
Again, joins us with the details, and this speaks to one of the biggest issues now consuming Americans, and that is what is happening with prices at the grocery store and how these tariffs are going to.
More likely to say, so I think that when you take a step back, this is another reminder beyond that beyond those scholars, national economic employment, spending, go all some yellow.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds and if anything comes out.
Let's hear about this new
Americans, businesses.
Yeah, Deanna, although we anticipating firm right now, I mean, this survey doesn't even fully the impacts of the trade and potential price increases from tariffs, but for me, which is seemed what support.
Can you tell me what things when you become just irrelevant?
Yeah, so, okay, well, to start.
Is another indicator that Americans are feeling stressed right now financially, right? Because they're essentially using borrowed money to buy essentially. So this survey from Lending Tree found that 1 in 4 buy now pay later borrowers that they use these working money to be checked. This is grocery, and as you mentioned, that's a significantly from a year ago. Yeah, buy now pay later has exploded in popularity because no interest rate typically which move loans, they do let people break up their. You can installment, which is very convenient, but there is this concern that it's so easy to reach that it's going to cause people to hit.
So I want to do this in the first place.
So that's just is that you know, let's say 12 rounds. And if you were essentially trying to camp to be a body, be a staff. And think that he had a great sense of humor. He just said, man, we can't sell those guys. He's never gonna commit to anybody. You got to do something out and sell them.
There does seem to be this.
Other categories, young groceries that have been popular with buying career users, food, buying furniture, clothes, electronics, beauty products. And one item that's actually not on that list is the 15% of people who say they use buying a career for delivery, for food delivery, or for food takeout. Think about that. Billboard recently reported that more than half of the people who attended Coachella, they bought their tickets using Buy Now, Pay Later, which is and as you know, this comes at a time when not only are prices high, but the cost of borrow is high too. Now, what's hard to understand here is, I mean, just because Buy Now, Pay Later is a relatively new and convenient option, and how much of it is happening because people are having trouble making ends meet. Now, one telling finding from the survey is the fact that a growing share of Buy Now, Pay Later borrowers say that they paid late, especially younger. More than half, 57% of Gen Zers say they paid late in the past year. About 50% of millennials as well. Also, higher income borrowers are more likely to say that they paid late. And so I do think that we take a step back. This is another reminder.
Flights, for example, operating Sunrise from London non-stop to Sydney. For years though, there was one flight, then it was known as the United Airlines Island Hotel. It starts in Guam and it sets at Side Island right away across the islands of Micronesia and the Marshall Islands to Honolulu. For hashtag ad geeks like me, this is one of the only great
It's already national economic and employment and consumer spending.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds and what, if anything, comes out of these tariff negotiations, how that impacts everyday Americans. That again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people that hear that maybe think about being picked last. It can have a little bit of a negative connotation to it. I think for me, it was, I always looked at it as an opportunity. Like this was an opportunity to pursue my lifelong dream of getting to play professional football. And so didn't really care where news or I was getting a start.
Can you tell me what happens when you become Mr. Irrelevant?
Yeah, so okay, well, to start, they have this thing called the Irrelevant League. It's out of Newport Beach, California. And it's basically a week-long, it's a week-long deal where they're going to kind of roast you and toast you. And when you are a place kicker and you have my last name, they have my ammunition, per se. And so they go out, they celebrate you. And it's, you just gotta be able to laugh at yourself. You gotta have thick skin. But it really is a special week. It's fun. I'll never forget it's at the Balboa Yacht Club out in Disney. The whole town kind of comes out. I just remember kind of thinking I'm sitting up on one of those big lifeguard chairs on the beach, and all these people are celebrating and bringing you all these gifts, and I'm kind of sitting there going, what in the world am I doing right now?
There's a trophy you get for being Mr. Irrelevant, which I think might be on the shelf behind you. Is that right? Do I see the Logan trophy there?
So, in all quick minutes, you must expect to play stop. kind of like a flow. Go in the shape of the airplane, around the area to make sure we don't get any birds that are coming in. That's a common thing.
You know what? I don't know what's the logan. That may be different, but I do know the logan that's
Passengers getting laid off. It's usually 155, 154, more than just days of to be. Since 1968, these flights have been at five.
From Hawaii and the other end, because
Ending 3 or 4. It's a new definition. And now we're feeling getting ready to go to the next one. The getting coming in everything. That 24 hours. The sun is setting. Quick journey. I'll just remember the warmth and calmness of kindness. I think of that. It's really the service. And you can play to elect the next politics to begin next week. Partners having not been decided on the date during a Monday meeting, only a select amount of cardinals can vote in the highly secretive process, which hasn't happened in more than a decade. CNN's Christopher Mann has seen this.
One by one, cardinals arrived at the Vatican this morning, with the policy of the future direction of the Catholic Church already underway. The conclave set to start. It's the cardinals to continue full steam ahead of Francis' reforms and vision, or slow things down. Give the Pope's funeral a strong message. The guiding thread of his mission is also the conviction that the Church is a home for all. A home with its doors always open, celebrating the reaction of the crowd as a signaling to the club to pursue continuity of the nation. He was popular among the people, but faced fierce resistance to self-empirical protest. Anyone overtly they disqualifies themselves. In the early exchanges, some cardinals are emphasizing that the next pope must focus on, quote, unity. Others, while saying the need for unity, identify a danger and underpin the church's rich diversity. Cardinal Michael Czerny of Canada worked closely with Pope Francis.
The issue firstly being confronted from that unity as your primary objective. End up with uniformity, which is exactly what we did. We spent decades now trying to go beyond uniformity we created. It's simple, policy, but simple ways and seeing things.
One voted, but two are seemingly violent. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Holy See Secretary of State, Vatican's top dicky, and Barbaro del Sino e dello Spirito Santo. An Italian who knows the system, yet his lack of experience of working at the church's grassroots could weigh against him. And there is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, leader of the evangelization. His carries the essence for the guidance of the church religion. The charismatic criminal Archbishop Miller is known for his advocacy for migrants and poor. In Lord and saw my grandfather from a swarming train on them. We are personally moved by their sentiment. He sometimes dubbed an Asian Francis. And all supported by Francis from every corner of the globe. This is a culture of being shared with foreigners. Mr. Collins, CNN. I don't think she's maybe as president, where we lack in the first line, but he's a stepping stone with the political body on this again. Well, the biggest controversy so far has been about immigration. In an interview with Get That Francis asked, whether a US resident or an American citizen was mistakenly deported. as is the case of Chima Braga Garcia, Central Government of El Salvador. The president's response? One thing will ever be perfect in this step. He went on to say he's not involved in individual conflicts, adding they're all extremely tough, dangerous people. And don't forget, they came into the country as illegals. The White House forum, the outside, and pictures where the administration says are in the US illegally, guilty of serious crimes. CNN has blurred the faces of those who've been called out by the White House because we are unable to verify their identities nor the allegations. CNN polls show voters are turning that pressure, especially on key issues like immigration and the economy, which helps him win the White House. 100 days into Trump's second presidency, and the latest CNN poll on 100 days shows that Trump is below water on all the key issues of the day. What are we talking about here? Let's take a look at approving of Trump's handling of immigration. Only 45% of the American public approves of the job that Trump is doing on immigration, which has been a strength for him during his second term, but now Trump is below 50%. About the economy, right? That was what Trump was elected to fix Joe Biden's economy. Get this, only 39% of Americans approve of the job that Donald Trump was doing on the economy. Inflation closely related to the economy.
But now Trump is below 50%. It's about the economy, right? That was what Trump
has been such a big in Trump's second term. Way below water on that. So get this, just 35% of Americans have approved of the job that he is doing. Now I want to go back to the economy because again, that was the issue that Trump was elected to fix. And the trend line here is so important. Trump's economic approval at 100 days. Back during his first term, get this, 39% of Americans approved of the job that Donald Trump was doing in the economy. It was a strength that was throughout his entire first term. Now get this, just 39% of Americans approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing on the economy. That is the lowest percentage this term for Trump on the economy. And get this, for all presidents, down 100 days, his approval rating at 39% remains the lowest. The lowest on all the time for James Morton, 1977, the longest we have on record. Finally, we take all the issues, right? We can pass them, and it creates an overall picture for Donald Trump. So let's take a look at what the approval rating days confirmed for the presidents this century and beyond. Donald Trump comes in at 41%. Guess what? That's lower than Joe Biden's 53%, lower than Trump in his first presidency at 44%, way lower than Obama at 63% in 2018, and 62% for George W. Bush back in 2001. That means that Trump currently at 41%, the worst this century, and beyond it is the worst on record dating back to 1953 and Dwight David Eisenhower. You put it all together, and this Trump poll from CNN just spelled trouble for the Trump presidency.
Received $46,000 National University of 16 scholarships. Launch your degree and it's time to learn. So it's 45 Saturday. If you
Just one video. Most finances. I think that's back on Sunday.
So I think the government did not publicly identify the riser reports, they just said did not that.
Never gone to investigation about the way out of this. Was finally judged that so the applicant spoke the ball in that meeting. So no question off in control and she said like out there like a man fire plane.
The name is not wrong, you get that from factor that you have very sophisticated sensitive electronics on it. So the point of why anybody actually not to check these letter off the bottom. Salvation ship out there with deep sea diving capability to grapple on towards the weapon of the airplane and bring it back up to its surface.
Okay, so single chance of a power jet are large.
Be slowly restored across Spain and Portugal after a major blackout on the Iberian Peninsula. It spawned widespread cancellations at airports and train stations. From the road that brought to a standstill, traffic light went out. Some residents spent for several months to stop offering basic essentials. And some of Spain's power supply has not been restored.
Prime Minister Andrew Sampson says the cause is still unknown.
For the countries, we still don't have conclusive information about the reasons for this outage. So I asked the public, as we have done in past crises, to seek information through official channels. It's best not to speculate. We'll find out the process. We're not ruling out any hypotheses, but now we must focus on what's most important: restoring power to our country.
In Portugal, electricity is being restored to 750,000 according to the country operator. The mayor of the urges people to stay in both.
We don't have any information about any kind of. And we should be very careful because it can be just a technical issue. But of course, a technical issue that never happened before. So I understand that people can be a little bit scared by the situation. But the city is working, the people are working, the transportation is working, the hospitals are working. And so I just ask people to keep calm and serene. That's very important at these moments.
Simon Gallagher is the manager of the Director of UK Network Services, a consultancy specializing in energy. Who's had with us? This has been driving for over 10 hours, engaging people in 3 pieces with no clear ideas. Why is it taking so long to discover?
Consumers now. Well, this has never happened before in Europe, so it is a catastrophic. How about this and just to put into perspective, I mean, this is likely to take into tomorrow. There's all sorts of things. I think this was actually in the United States back in 2003 when the definitely went to New York. It's all that scale. So this is a catastrophic failure across being. And really, it will go on until tomorrow. So very nice.
Reason for this remains mystery. No one seems to cause such a power because 3 countries, as well as connection issues for both phone and internet.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is this is not. I mean, the grid has got all sorts of systems built in to stop these things happening. So every day, the problems on electricity grids worldwide, but they're all built to contain. So something catastrophic has failed. We're beginning to get some reasons behind it. So we do know tonight that there was a problem with the interconnect cables between Spain and France. Now, internationally, Spain was not allowed to connect to the rest of Europe the way she might have been. So those cables won't like the capacity of about 4 megawatts. Spain lost 15, which was German sensitive, which is about half their entire grid. So that isn't the reason. It's probably why they wanted why this is done. Now, if the percentage of the benefit 35% of Donald Trump's handing to the braces, 6.3 from last month. You know, so Scott got us, look at the president, ended up handling it, and all the cases, we didn't win the one. We go over science. One of U.S. President Donald Trump's main campaign promises is going to stop and we're going to have the largest mass deportation effort in history of the world. It's perhaps one of his most successful so far, despite backlash from countries in Latin America and critics in the U.S. After Trump ordered the U.S. military to secure the border, insisted massive detentions, Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, refused to allow 2 military planes carrying refugees to land in his country because he didn't like seeing migrants in shackles as they were being transported. But Petro ended up sending a reasonable shipping with his citizens generally were
all under one roof, like steel, and clothes.
So far, are not working out as planned. The military is internally facing Cuba, near 50,000 militaries from the September 11 attacks, is now also being used as an immigration detention center and must have eventually been deported. Immigrants using the alien enemies so it can fill the case. It dates back to 1789 and has only been used
Have eventually been deported to their country of origin or returned to the US without explanations. Back at home, President Trump's policies continue to face legal challenges, even with a conservative administration.
From El Salvador, the US illegally can be deported. Some have claimed the government is detaining them without
Majority, the Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to stop deporting some immigrants using the Alien Enemies Act. So it can hear the case that dates back to 1780 and has only been used in time of war. It allows for the detention and quick deportation of foreign adult men considered a danger to the United States. The Trump administration argues that members of international crime organizations like Agua from Venezuela and MS-13 from El Salvador in the US illegally can be deported under the act. Some have claimed the government is detaining them without evidence, and many say they are entitled to challenge their removal.
That's not what this law is. This law is for the United States executive. The administration is arguing that it's the president that's we have problems with gangs and cartels, but the definition of war and invasion was very clear in 1790 when this law was passed, and that does not mean it.
And then there is the case of Gilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man deported to his country, even though an immigration judge had ruled he shouldn't be. The U.S. admits it was a mistake, but his case has led to a stand-up in Abrego Garcia's legal team, the courts who ordered his return to the U.S., and the Trump administration's refusal to work to bring him back.
Amazon, the favorite.
Opens the captain where feeding. She was in pain, so she's known no Harrison. Being from the Northern Person and the stage for two, that she was a reactive video rate and we killed in.
It's a real sort of seed of truth that draws me. It's something that's the truth. You think, oh, it's here from the world. So we go to lower. Choose to be the German distinguishes your house to this. A 2024. It's 30 years. Wow. Spain at age 70 has measured praising an alleged Nazi sympathizer, President Trump's nominee to be one of the nation's most powerful prosecutors, apologizing for doing just that. He faces a tough time for this role. And Martin is Trump's pick as U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. He did not feel the man in Now Martin says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you what I said. Everything you were right. We finally said, well, yeah, and the update file is here now. So, Andrew, distancing himself now from this obviously supported that in the staff there. But he had repeatedly praised this individual in the past. What did you find?
Yeah, he's apologizing now. He says he wasn't aware of the full extent of his comments, but the audio that we found sort of directly or appears to directly undermine that, because we found on multiple podcasts and events they actually discussed this guy's alleged view. They even brought up that mustache that everybody just saw, and they discussed it. They really sort of almost dismissed it. Take a listen to them talking about it here.
And took a photo and leaked the photo to say, look, these people, MAGA people, are anti-Semitic. And the photo is of you, I heard you say before, you had like a mustache shaved in such a way that you looked vaguely like Hitler, and making jokes about it. Again, not your best moment, but not illegal. Have you ever been to a Nazi rally?
So not only is he aware of this guy's behavior, obviously again in front, but for two have been following it and really putting him a full part of it. Yeah, that's it. And he's talking an amazing job. He's downplaying some of the things that we saw. He's downplaying his views that he had entirely called it character assassination. Even though when he's saying that he didn't know about it, his racist and his anti-Semitic views came out long before Martin associating with him. I'm pretty sure every single article on this guy as a big racist writer mentioned that there will be documented as a investigation where
person still, this is what I say about him. So Mr. Butt, he subbed out with a great friend of yours too, Tim Hale. The only thing you did that was really egregious to me was at one point he was sort of dancing in one of the areas as separating America. It wasn't your best dance move. Our next guest is Timothy Hale. He's an amazing guy who has gotten through all that and has great perspective. So welcome back, Tim. How are you? And again, so this is the quote for how he is having to get the secret questions and answers to some of your questions. Just actually because where got those answers aside and done by the answers that were said about Mr. Hale was quote is reading from these famous quotes with me, but we keep excited that we found. I said the first chicken was still the guy. I got by like say was friends over the last few years. So now basically before and said extraordinary, yes.
Extraordinary account. Major blackout on the peninsula spawns widespread cancellations at airports and train stations. As on the road, reporters stand there as traffic lights went out. Some residents want to signal this to stop up the basic essentials. Spain's capital supply has now been installed. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the pause is still long.
Piece of information about the reasons for this out. So I asked the public, as we have done in past crises, to seek information through official channels. It's best not to speculate. Find out the causes. I'm not ruling out any hypothesis, but now we must focus on what's most important: restoring power to our communities.
In Portugal, electricity has been restored to 750,000 customers, according to the country's power operator. The mayor of the statement.
We don't have any information about any kind of attack, and you should be very careful because it can be just a technical issue, but of course a technical issue that never happened before. So I understand that people can be a little bit scared by the situation, but the city is working. The people are working, the transportation is working, the hospitals are working, and so I just ask people to keep calm and serene. That's very important at these moments.
Simon Gallagher is the managing director at UK Network Services, a consultancy specializing in energy. Good to have you with us.
Hello.
This is driving on for over 10 hours, impacting people in 3 countries with no clear, obvious reason. Why is it taking so long to restore power?
Well, this has never happened before in Europe, so it is a catastrophic failure that's happened in Spain and Portugal. And just to put it into perspective, this is likely to take into tomorrow to resolve. The closest things happened to us was actually in the United States back in 2003 when it was at Park up down Canada and New York. It's all that scale, so this is a catastrophic failure across Spain and Portugal, and really it will go on until tomorrow at the very least.
The reason for this side remains a mystery, right? No one seems to know what could have caused such a power outage across 3 countries, as well as connection issues for both phone and internet.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is this should not happen. The grid has got all sorts of systems built in to stop these things happening. So every day there's problems on electricity grids worldwide, but they're all built to contain that. So something catastrophic has failed. We're beginning to get some reasons. So we do recognize that there is a problem with the interconnected cables between Spain and France. Now, internationally, Spain isn't that well connected to the rest of Europe the way some other countries are. So those cables have only got a capacity of about 4 megawatts. Spain lost 15 megawatts during the century, which is about half their entire grid. So that isn't the reason, but probably one of the reasons why this is going to some catastrophic events.
There's research for showing that the greater the difference in one person, you people know that more policy and markets than merely mess. So these are the old control. These are next to us.
And it's just an issue of the. She said it's reasons with my dad's kids series. There are these over the days that because kids don't want this many things as they want. And then particularly the colors that are going in and we discuss their things. The kids are. President Era, for sharing people in NYU. So it's been collecting cereal since 20 years. Ancestor, supplies, started $100. Millions of complete sets. Rice Krispies. Here's here. But U.S. cereals like Fruit Loops made soon to use as health secretary Freddie Kennedy Jr. was pledged to rid them of synthetic petroleum-based dyes within 10 years. Some say maybe. If Canada can keep petroleum, they want to keep petroleum. They should be safeguarding us. These dyes have different fluids they've been in the machine for decades. This is like first one on the 1063. Were they using petroleum dyes in dyes? Yes, saying for everything. We food labels from 30 years ago. Companies had to start listing ingredients in the package. Red number 40, natural lines, sorry, considers yellow most sex food on their skins. So they already have they had but they didn't stop with cereal boxes from other countries which have already made the switch. So vegetable-based dyes more muted colors. In the past, Nessa says Americans haven't liked this. There's been pitches to get these cereal companies to get rid of the code for years of logic. And so finally they said, okay, we're going to do it. So they produced tricks using artificial colors. And the tricks were trying black colors and solid colors. Of course, really red flowers are really safe. So then what the company did, they brought back the golden companies. Still around, she says it may be different, but the companies say they are making some changes. Kellogg told us they're reformulating cereal serving spoons to include the dyes. It won't include them in any new products starting next year. Nessa said though she looked for more from the government. But really, it's wrong. And she points out that when food dyes are the cereals still filled with sugar. If you're a kid and you're used to that, you're not going to be interested in this. Because these cereals are not about cereal themselves, they're about the cereal. The question always has been, when did it become okay with things this way, the things and places?
Sketch dragon images feeding everything said. The 2006 movie Miami Vice was very arresting at the box office, but Universal is trying again with another film based on the iconic 80s TV series. Top Gun Maverick director Joseph Kosinski is set to helm the new movie about undercover detectives in South Florida. No casting. Here's a treat for Johnny Cash fans, courtesy of his daughter. The Cindy Cash collection is one of the largest ever auctions of the legendary singer-songwriter's personal possessions, including rare photographs of Cash and his family, furniture like this hand-carved dragon bed, and jewelry, including this naturally green-white diamond ring and 13 rare gold. The auction runs through Sunday. All info at cindycash.com. Trump was just for it. There's no traumatized musician finds himself drawn to an old White House and beginning to see the reality. Jack Houston, Abby Forrest, and Brandon T. Jackson star in the drama, which arrives on digital and VOD platforms Friday. Jim Hall, living with the game. Grab the seats to the new Toyota. They paid season release today at the road. Enter the call for a thing of this in the Toyota station today with a live bid. These tickets are now for just $199 a month. Or get low financing or $3,000 cash back on Sunday. Plus, check out the all in your store. So yeah, let's make this. Checking more top stories on how do we feel about funding? Because I felt we needed big changes. But big changes guided by strong Canadian values. Values that I learned at the dinner table from my parents, Bob and Bernie, and from my siblings. I appreciate small retrospect from my siblings. My siblings, Brenda, Sean, and Brian. Values that I learned on the ice from my coaches. Values that have been on the test. I've met with lines across this country. Those include common values that are receiving. Ambition, it's Canada after all. And unity, it's Canada. Like that. These are good guys, these are Canadian values. Values that I will do my best. I'm just getting worked up here. These are values that I will do my best to uphold every day. That's your Prime Minister, you betcha. Right? Okay, well, you have to judge after this next session because I am going to begin. I am going to begin. And by admitting to over my long, it's not an applause line, it's just a statement of fact. Over my long career, many mistakes, and I will do more. I commit to admitting them openly, to correcting them quickly, and always learning. You know, humility underscores the importance of governing as a team in the economy and in democracy, and working constructively with all parties. Of working in partnership with the provinces and territories. With Indigenous. And at this time, it underscores the value of bringing together labor, business, civil society to advance the nation-building investments we need to transform. Humility is also about recognizing that one of the responsibilities of government is to prepare for the worst. As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, resources, our water, our country. Never. These are not idle things. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen. But we also must recognize the reality that our world has fundamentally changed. There's also, for me, as I stand before you this evening, humility in recognizing that, well, many have chosen to place trust in me, trust in the Liberal Party. Millions of our fellow citizens. It's going to be different. And my message to every Canadian is this: no matter where you live, no matter what language you speak, no matter how you vote, I will always do my best to represent everyone who calls Canada. Thank you very much, Jim. NFL's biggest draft prospect, Shedeur Sanders, received a call allegedly from the general manager of the New Orleans Saints Friday during the NFL draft. The call turned out to be a scam. Okay. Here we go, Lee. This moment in video is posted by Well Off Media, a production company that shows player Deion Sanders Jr. Shedeur is a son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, who served as his son's only college coach. He was heavily favored to be selected in the perennials NFL draft, expected to be one of the first players in Washington. Shedeur was not drafted to the Saints. His friends and family could be both sound and encouraging debates. Imagine it's a bold girl, but really happy you're supposed to have. The day after the cover, the former University of Colorado quarterback is drafted to the Cleveland Browns in the fifth round as the 144th overall pick. The son of the Falcons defensive coordinator, Jeff Hardwick, has apologized for that. Railed it is completely inexcusable, embarrassing, and shameful. An apology from the Falcons stating that Jack Spicer, not Shedeur's number, nothing part of that, and his father's house without his knowledge. So chicken phone. We're going to do your place.
The first guy that almost laid down first over a creative force that are saying
Agents can do this without getting better every day.
Now, on the course of work, actually, this hour.
should be with you for innovation, flexibility, and you, because we know you want to be everywhere. Whether you find flying, in digital space or stadium engagement, using activity and adoption virtually and sends an influence and experiences. National University is making education more accessible, so you can keep your fascinating your lessons and your ambitions. Now, your mom at NU.edu.
Two premises. First, yes. Was never hugely popular in that sense, but more importantly, Americans got their identical. I mean, this is what it is. America saying, there's the worst place. But I don't know about Barry's in this because his voters, the people that voted for him, still really get this. And Republicans, as part of this argument, he's clearly in these polls lost the political middle. Independents have sort of fleed from the hills. He wasn't hugely popular. But he had his own highest poll numbers when he took office in January of his entire political career. So that is a higher version of that. And he's also taking a higher than he's rated by 31% of the market. See that as
So this is like tonight. 50% chance of a recession. That is the prediction night. Metropolitan risk force and slot. This is using a dial.
He writes it just his folder. Sell US stores, and he rates the total resources of students, enterprises, and Chinese